Let's talk reproduction. So I already have the R here. Let me fill things in. Reproduction. Now, reproduction itself is a very broad topic. It's a completely broad topic. So obviously, it has a huge ton of subsections. In this particular segment, we will simply focus on the forms of reproduction. So, asexual and sexual. Then I'll talk a little bit about gamete and fertilization. And then we can compare fertilization in humans and fertilization in plants to end things with. Okay, so to start things off, we'll start with asexual versus sexual reproduction. Asexual versus sexual reproduction. Reproduction. Me pink. I'll go for a pretty pink. Okay, that's a new color. Right. Now, I will start off with asexual reproduction. Start off with asexual reproduction. Now, when it comes to the forms of reproduction, questions will ask you straight away, define, outline, explain, or iterate what this type of reproduction is. So a question might ask you, explain or outline what is meant by asexual reproduction. So in those particular scenarios, you have to have a certain way of defining that particular process under your arsenal. So I'm going to start off with a formal definition for asexual reproduction. So I would say that asexual reproduction is the process by which, this is very important, genetically identical, genetically identical offspring are produced from a single parent. So I'll just say one parent for simplicity. Key things are that we're producing genetically identical offspring and you're only requiring a single parent. We only require a single parent. When I get to examples, I'll elaborate on that. So right now, some key takeaways for asexual reproduction is that since we just need one parent, there will be no fusion of gametes. No fusion of gametes is involved. Is it? Okay, that would simply mean that there's no fertilization. No fertilization. What on earth is fertilization? Please hold your horses. We'll talk about that in a bit as well. Now, like in the definition, we'll emphasize once again that only a single parent is required. Only one parent is needed. Only a single parent is needed. So since there's only one parent needed, therefore all the babies, or in more biological terms, all offspring. Okay, you don't really say babies in biology. I mean, yeah. All offspring are indeed identical. All the offspring are identical to each other and the parent. So it would look something like this. Now, if this is mother plant, so mom plant right here, and mom plant produces two other baby plants, so baby A and baby B. Now they are all identical. The offspring are identical to each other as well as the mother, the parent plant. So simply put, mother plant is equal to B. Genetically identical. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. They are genetically identical. They're basically the exact same plant with the exact same traits and exact same characteristics, right? So all offspring are identical. So one of the best examples that I can give you for asexual reproduction is bacteria and plants. Reproduce asexually, produce asexually. Okay, now this being genetically identical, this genetically identical nature is good, and it is also kind of bad. The main bad thing about being genetically identical would be we have a lot less variation among the population. We have a lot less variation. Simply put, everyone's the same. Everyone's the same. Okay. Everyone's going to be the same. Now, how can everyone be the same? I shall show you an example of, I'll use bacteria as an example. So bacteria undergo an asexual process called binary fission. It's known as binary fission. Now, if you were to look closely to this on the diagram, you can see we have a bacterial cell. They have small circular DNA known as plasmid, and of course they have chromosomes. You don't have to put that much effort into understanding that. So simply speaking, they double their cell contents. So now we have two sets of DNA and twice as much plasmids, and they divide. So split in half, they divide. That division we refer to as binary fission. Binary fission. This is very similar to mitosis as well. Simple cell division. Okay. That was about asexual reproduction. Coming back, asexual reproduction is the process by which genetically identical offspring are produced from one parent. There is no fusion of gametes, and only one parent is needed, and all the babies, all the offspring, they are identical to each other and the mother plant. Okay, mainly speaking, these are the best examples, honestly. Even if you go towards the deepest ends of biology, these are the best examples. Bacteria and plants for asexual reproduction. And fungi also, that's regarding spores, but that's not relevant here. Okay. Right. Now, to continue on, we'll talk about how sexual reproduction comes into play. How sexual reproduction works and how it comes into play. Like we did before with asexual reproduction, I would like to start off with a formal definition for sexual reproduction as well. So now, let's see. It is also a process, obviously. Now, the process by which offspring that are genetically, what do you think? That are genetically, this time it's not identical. This time it's genetically different. It'll become abundantly clear why this genetically different and indifferences arise in a moment. So for now, you have to know that sexual reproduction means that we're getting offspring that are genetically different from one another. One another are produced by the fusion of two gametes forming a zygote. Forming a zygote. Okay, that would be the definition for sexual reproduction. All right. Now, let's just go over the key points from this definition like we did before with asexual reproduction. We use the exact same green. Right. Now, you can clearly see fertilization is involved. Before that, I'll talk about the parents. We need two parents. You can't do sexual reproduction with just one parent. If flowers are sexually reproducing, we need two parents. If humans are sexually reproducing, we obviously need two parents. If animals are sexually reproducing, if mammals are sexually reproducing, we need two parents, like so. And then that obviously means fusion of gametes happen. The fusion of gametes happen. Thus, it is prevalently obvious that fertilization occurs. Fertilization occurs. Okay? Wonderful thing about sexual reproduction is that a lot of variation is present. Why? Everyone is not the same. Each offspring is different from one another and from the parents. Best example is us humans. We don't look like our parent. I know people say you look like your mom, you look like your dad. Yeah, true. I mean, resemblances are there, but we are not the same. Unless you're very identical twins, you're different from your siblings, you're different from your parents. Why? That is because of sexual reproduction. Now, underlying sexual reproduction, of course, we have a thousand different ways in which this variation is produced. Okay? Random fertilization, mutagenic factors, independent assortment, segregation. There's a lot of ways in which sexual reproduction produces genetic variation. Now, all those things are beyond the scope of this syllabus. You just have to know the definition of sexual reproduction, some key points that you have to know for sexual reproduction, and that is honestly basically it that you have to know. Moving on, we'll talk about gametes and subsequent fertilization. Gametes and fertilization. What are gametes? Have you heard of this term before? I believe so. Gametes. Yeah, I mean gametes, you can pronounce it either way. But gametes are simply, I'll call them sex cells. Call them sex cells. So gametes are simply sex cells produced by, here's the thing, gametes are produced by a special process called meiosis. Honestly, we say special form of cell division. Special form of cell division. That would be discussed under protein synthesis and cell division. Not under this. Here you simply have to know that gametes are produced by a process called meiosis, and they happen in germline cells. What's a germline cells? Germline cells. Meaning your reproductive cells, reproductive system. So that is ovaries for female and testes for male. Right? So gametes are simply sex cells produced by meiosis. And then in humans, we'll talk about this specific gametes in humans. Now, in humans, this would be, so the male gamete, the male sex cell or the male gamete would be the sperm cell. The female gamete is called the egg cell. Call it sperm cell, egg cell, sperm, and egg. A noteworthy mention about gametes is that gametes contain one half. So gametes contain half, which is exactly one half the number of chromosomes. Number of chromosomes compared to normal body cells. Compared to normal body cells. Compared to normal body cells. Normal body, normal body cells. What is that? I'll dive into that a little bit deeper in a moment. Now here, this is for humans, no? What about plants? I'll just do plants on the side. What about plants? What do plants have? So the male gamete and the female gamete for plants would be pollen, and again we have an egg, basically an ovule. We have an egg, basically an ovule. We have an egg, basically an ovule. Yeah, a plant. Now, what about this diploid, diploid, dysploid, ploid thing? What am I even talking about? Let's take a normal body cell. Let's take a normal body cell. A normal body cell contains 46 chromosomes. So what I have here is a very normal, non-cancerous, non-problematic body cell. Now that Now, we emphasize that gametes contain only half the number of chromosomes. So, numerically, gametes only contain 23. Why? That's our question. Why do gametes contain 23? Now, I'm just going to draw, I'll get into the details of sperm and eggs in a moment. We'll talk about that. I'll just show you roughly what a sperm looks like and what an egg cell looks like. Now, they contain 23 chromosomes and 23 chromosomes. Now, in biology, if we contain the total number of chromosomes, we call that it is a diploid cell. It is a diploid cell, and we denote it using 2n, meaning we have two sets. We have the complete set of chromosomes, no issue. Now, if we only possess 23, that is said to be a haploid cell. We denote it by just a single N. Denoted by a single N. Now, why do these gametes only contain 23 and 23? This is why. During fertilization, which I will also get to in a bit, they fuse. They combine. Move this to the side. They fuse, they combine. Now, when 23 combines with 23, we get a full-on blown out 46. Full-on blown out 46. No issues. Now we have a normal body cells number of chromosomes in the zygote. So we call this a zygote. Get to that in a bit as well. So this is a 46 zygote. Now just imagine if both of these gametes contained all 46, not just 23. They contained all 46. What would we have? We would have finally 92 chromosomes in the cell. That is a huge problem. I don't think the fetus will even be biologically heritable. It's a huge problem. It's a huge disease, a huge disorder. So the fetus will not survive. You have to have the proper number of chromosomes for proper protein synthesis, for proper gene expression to continue life. Okay. That is why these gametes, they are designed to have one half of the original number of chromosomes. 23 plus 23 will give you 46. Give you 46. Right, that is how that works. Now for gametes, you do back in and scroll down. I have to say that they are special. Gametes are special. Gametes have to be special. They carry on life. It's not a small deal, it's a huge deal. They carry on life. So we have to make sure that gametes are special, right? Biology and nature has made sure that gametes are special. I'll tell you how. Now, these gametes are especially adapted to fuse together. To fuse together. When undergoing fertilization. Undergoing fertilization. Now, on my left hand side, I will draw you a sperm cell. On my right hand side, I will draw you a egg cell. And then I will provide some proper diagrams just to lock everything in. So it's like this. If I draw a sperm cell, it's going to look something like this. Not the best artist, by the way. Okay. Then I'm going to draw an X. Now I'm going to complete the sperm and do something interesting. Right. Now, near the head of the sperm, near its head, we have a specific structure like this. Have a specific structure like this. I'll name that later. And then below that, we have our nucleus. I will also label and name that in a moment. Okay, we have our nucleus. Bear in mind that this is a haploid nucleus, meaning it only contains 23, which I will also write down in a moment. Right? So that is the head part of the sperm. And then here, this is the middle part. Now you can see that this middle part is a little bit bulged. The reason being, it has these structures. Oh, interesting. What are those structures? Those are mitochondria. Those are mitochondria. And then finally, we have a nice little tail or flagella for swim. I'll label them. Why did I not label? And what is the interesting thing? This. I'm going to take this sperm and reduce its size dramatically. Why did I do that? That is to denote that the egg cell is much larger than the sperm cell. The egg cell is much larger than the sperm cell. So it is a very important distinction. And of course, the egg cell contains the haploid nucleus as well, like so, and some oil droplets and ribosome and all that. Okay, right now let's get to, I have to zoom in now. Let's get to the sperm and label this up. Now, this upper part is known as the acrosome. This acrosome produces hydrolytic enzymes. What do you mean by hydrolytic enzymes? Hydrolytic enzymes are enzymes that can destroy or hydrolyze, break down something. Okay. I'll tell you how this acrosome works and what exactly we need to break down in a minute. Then we have a haploid and nucleus. Then we have mitochondria, and this is our tail, or this is sometimes also referred to as a flagella. If I just distinguish the parts of this sperm, we have a head, body, and tail. simple. The parts of sperm. What about the egg cell? Now this egg cell, this is the cell membrane of the egg cell. Cell membrane of the egg cell. Then what does that make this? Is that the cell wall? No, not really. Now this egg cell contains a jelly coating. Scientifically, this is kind of known as the zona pellucida. That's okay. We don't have to go that far. I will give it to you if you want. So I get that. Zona pellucida, if my pronunciation is right. Zona pellucida. This is just a jelly coat. Okay, and then like before we have the haploid nucleus. 23. 23. Those are the basic parts of both gametes, male and female. Now, just to add a little bit more detail, now this sperm, I'm just gonna replicate this sperm. Okay. Okay. Now this guy can swim. He has a tail, right? He's capable of swim. Get rid of the screen. Okay. He can swim. He can swim, and come. Now there's a problem. There's a jelly coating. This sperm can penetrate through this jelly coating on its own. You have to break the jelly coating down. You have to break the jelly coating down. How would you break the jelly coating down? Using what? Do you hammer it? Do you punch it? Do you, I don't know, kick it? Not really. This is when this acrosome comes into play. When the sperm meets the zona pellucida region, the jelly coating, the acrosome produces hydrolytic enzymes to break down the jelly layer. So it can now pass through via the cell membrane into the egg cell. And this is how it goes. It doesn't go like this. It doesn't enter it entirely. It's just the head. I'll illustrate this properly under fertilization in a few minutes. So this is how it works. It just goes in like this. Simply like this. Head in, and that is basically all. That is basically all. Okay. Like this. Just goes in. Simple. Now I'll take that off so right. So these are the gametes. Now, as promised, let me give you a proper diagram of both them. Right. We have the sperm, we have the egg cell. We have mitochondria, we have cell membrane, haploid nucleus, brain, there's a tail, there's a flagella, here's a mitochondria, haploid nucleus, and we have the acrosome. We have the acrosome. Right. Moving forward, let's start fertilization. Start fertilization. Now, fertilization, you can use an S, you can use a V, and yeah. Fertilization. Simply speaking, fertilization is the fusion, the fusion of a male and female gamete to produce a zygote. What do you say? Zygote. What is that? Let's see. I'm going to take a typical sperm cell and now take an egg cell. It's very salty. Just to emphasize, once again, we have 23 chromosomes each. and then they fuse. Then they fuse. When they fuse, previously we discussed, we get some, right? So right, this thing. I called it a zygote, and I will still with a zygote. We get a zygote. Zygote contains the proper chromosome number of a diploid cell, which is 46. We now have 46 chromosomes. All good, right? Sperm plus egg produces a zygote. That is the process of fertilization, the fusion of male and female gametes to produce a zygote. So if you want to improve, now this definition is completely enough for IGCSE and O levels. If you want to improve this definition, you could say fertilization is the fusion of a haploid male and haploid female gamete to produce a diploid zygote. It's not that hard to do that. If you wish, you can absolutely do that to score a few extra examiner points. Not really marks, because this will give you the total number of marks given for that question, but you will create a proper impression with that specific exam. Oh, this guy knows what he's writing. Oh, this girl knows what she's writing. So, plus points from the examiner or whoever is marking your paper, your teachers, your seniors, your peers, anything. Whenever they have a proper impression of your writing, they are very likely, very much more likely. There's a certain percentage I can't remember. Researches have been carried out on that as well. So there's a specific percentage higher that you're likely to get marks. Okay, right. So now I'll use this exact same diagram to illustrate fertilization. The sperm comes and stopped by the jelly layer. So it can't penetrate through the jelly layer. What happens? The acrosome releases hydrolytic enzymes, and it penetrates through the zona pellucida or the jelly layer. And then it penetrates through the cell membrane like this. Now I'm going to take that out again, and I'm going to give it its nucleus in this cup. So that is the sperm nucleus, and this is the egg's nucleus. Like so. Now let's do that again. Acrosome, hydrolytic enzyme, digests the jelly layer, boom, into the cell like so. That's it. It doesn't go anywhere anymore. It's just the head of this particular sperm that goes. And then this nucleus is released into the eggs. And then this guy goes and binds with this. Now we have a zygote here. Now we have a zygote here with a diploid number of cells. Diploid zygote. So with time, this sperm pair would degenerate like so, and the nuclei would properly fuse with each other to give us a diploid zygote. Give us a diploid zygote. And then something special about the egg cell, this contains enough nutrients. So we call this the yolk of the egg cell. It's very similar to, egg yolks, right? Egg white and egg yolks, they store nutrients, they store aeration materials, they store enzymes, they store protein, they store lipids, they store carbohydrates, anything required for nourishment of this particular egg cell, which has now become a zygote. A zygote will become an embryo. The embryo will replicate to become a fetus, and then a baby, a human, and then we have you. fertilization and the continuity of life is a wonderful process. It is a process that is being studied every day. And a noteworthy mention would be that no machine is capable of nourishing a baby like a female body. The female body is the only thing that can produce a proper living, breathing human being from a very primal state, a very primal stage or state. Yeah, not yet. So I'm pretty sure technology will advance in that direction as well. But as for now, the female body is the only thing that can produce and nourish a child like this. Okay, right. So let me give you a small flowcharty diagram here. Fertilization in humans. So during sexual intercourse, semen is ejaculated into the female's vagina. Sperm can travel. How can they travel? They have tails, flagella, and they have mitochondria producing energy for those flagella for the tail. Okay. Now this sperm swim, and it occurs in the oviduct, which is the fallopian tubes. Okay, and then a human zygote, like we discussed, contains 46 chromosomes entirely. Change this color like so, and then this is the process itself. Tails propel the sperm, they contain the head, sperm nucleus enters, okay, egg nucleus, they fuse. This is the protective jelly coating I was talked about, and the nuclei fusion, that is it. We have a diploid zygote for humans. Fertilization in humans is a rather beautiful, very simple if explained like this process, but this is honestly, the more you go like advanced, you learn about fertilization, you realize that there are more steps, more things are in. This is just a very surface level explanation that you require for your IGCSE and O levels. Right. Moving on to a little bit of fertilization in plants. And this is not that significant like fertilization in humans. It's just about plants. Now, if I talk about fertilization in plants, fertilization occurs when a pollen tube grows. That's the important thing. So when a pollen tube grows from a pollen grain into the ovule in the ovary, here the male and female gametes fuse to form the embryo. Now let's take a closer look on this time. Here's pollen. These pollen come and deposit on this stigma. Now, this is a process known as pollination. This is a process known as pollination. This is a process known as pollination. Process known as pollination onto the stigma. Okay? So, the moment a pollen lands on the stigma, a tube grows. Do you see this? This is a tube into the ovum. And along that tube, this thing will be transported. So the pollen grain, if I just show you a very large pollen grain, inside we have the male nucleus. We have the male nucleus. Where do we find the female nucleus? It's already in the ovary, right here. That is the female nucleus. That is the female nucleus. It's already in the ovary. So we have to have a way for these two things to meet. So that is exactly what is happening here as well. We have to have a way for these nuclei to meet and fuse. It's the objective. That's what we need. So right here, that is done by something known as a pollen tube. And by something known as a pollen tube. Thank God we don't have a special name for pollen tube. Just call it pollen tube. Right? So this male haploid again nucleus travels down, 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 like so, and fuses with the haploid female nucleus to produce once again a diploid seed, a diploid seed, a diploid seed. You can call it zygote, yes, but if you just look at the plant, the seed is the actual reproductive part. You know, you grow plants by using seeds, right? You take a seed, you plant it, and you have a plant, right? And then what happens to this ovary? Now you see the seed is here, right here. Surrounding the seed, we have the ovary. Surrounding the seed, we have the ovary. This ovary will later become the fruit that you eat. This ovary simply becomes the fruit. So inside the fruit only you get seeds. So this thing will become the fruit, and inside you will have seed. Seeds, not just one seed, but seeds most of the time. You have seeds, fruit into seeds. So that is basically how fertilization happens in plants. And now another question might be, why in the world am I showing a flower? That is because the flower is the main reproductive organ. The main reproductive organ of a plant. Further explanations will be provided on pollination, reproduction, and adaptation of special flowers for pollination under these topics in future explanations. For now, all you have to know about is this simple fertilization process in not that much detail. This process will be explained in detail as well. To recap, we have reproduction. We have different forms of reproduction. Asexual, we assigned a formal definition to that. All good. Then we talked about sexual reproduction. We assigned a proper name to that as well. I mean, definition to that as well. Talked about some key points for both. And we came on to gametes and fertilization. And we talked about the sperm cell and the egg cell. And now for plants, it should make more sense. The male gamete is the pollen, the female is the ovule, like so. So gametes contain half the number of chromosomes, 23, 23. The reason being, you should, when combine 23 plus 23, only you should get 46, like so. So gametes have special adaptations like mitochondria, flagella. This thing has a jelly coat, and we have a nourishing site here for the zygote, enough nutrients stored on the yolk, all those stuff. And then fertilization is simply the fusion of these two gametes. The fusion of these two gametes. That's what fertilization is. The fusion of these gametes to form a diploid zygote. So we can improve this definition, like we said. So fusion of a haploid male gamete and a haploid female gamete to produce a zygote. And now fertilization in humans. This is a very extensive. This is the exact same thing, just a detailed description. And then fertilization in plants, where we talk about the growth of the pollen tube and how the pollen tube is able to carry this specific pollen grain down towards the ovary to meet with the female gamete of the plant, which is the ovule, right over here. The female gamete of the plant is the ovule right over here to form a diploid seed, or you can say that we're forming a diploid zygote. That is perfectly fine as well. Plants also have special adaptations in their reproductive organs, which is the flower. So, for example, flowers have very brightly colored petals. Flowers are capable of having very brightly colored petals. That is to simply attract insects for pollination and then to subsequently follow up with fertilization. So, I think I should mention that as well. Extensively, pollination will be talked about. So, pollination occurs first, and then fertilization occurs in a plant. then fertilization occurs in a plant. Pollination, and then fertilization. That is the order of how things happen. So if pollination and fertilization successfully occurs, the plant is now fertilized and a fruit will develop. If there's no pollination, there's no fertilization, there's no formation of a seed, there's no fruit formation, and the plant would not simply yield you any fruit. Simple as that. So that is the basic parts of reproduction complete. Comparison of asexual reproduction, sexual reproduction, gametes and fertilization in plants and humans.